I'm 86 kilograms right now, and I need to get to 77 kilograms for a race season. That means dropping 9 kilograms without losing any power. So I called in an expert. I called Dr. Sam Impey, World Tour nutritionist, to rebuild my fueling strategy from scratch. This is what it actually takes to get to race weight. Sam Impey, welcome back to the Roadman podcast.
Hey, good to be back.
So the grand overarching goal for today. I was 86 kilograms starting off this journey. I have a target weight around 77 kilograms. We're going to dive heavy into the strategy. But first, when an athlete approaches you and you hear that sort of weight loss, where does your head go as a nutritionist?
The simplest answer and always the first answer to that is how long. Always.
Okay, interesting.
Always how long. And you get a wild mix of answers from the sort of the number of kilos divided by 2, and that's the number of weeks they've got, or you get a hey, I'm gonna do this over a 3-month period, a 5-month period. It's something that I want to work towards as a much longer, a much bigger goal, or it varies wildly. So most of the time it's around setting expectations and kind of tempering some initial plans sometimes.
I surveyed a section of our email list around this, and most people came back with they want to hit race weight. And then I was kind of left just before this podcast a little bit early, and I was jotting down some notes, and I was like, what is race weight? Is race weight, do you think it's a number? Is it a feeling? Is it a performance metric? Is it a body calipers reading?
Do you know what? That's the eternal question. I mean, I've been asked this a few times, like, how do I find my race weight? Like, what is my race weight? Race weight is the eternal question. And honestly, it's probably a combination of how do you feel? What's your perception of how your performance is? And, kind of, is that tied to, or, would you be confident to back up absolute capacity with a little bit of durability? Like, how long can you sustain the sort of physiological state that you're in? I would love to tell you that there's a formula for it, but there really isn't. We were kind of chatting a little bit about Jonas Abrahamsson there before. I think he's quite a nice example of someone who you would have asked him 5-6 years ago, what's your race weight? You'd get a very different answer than you would today.
58 or 78, I think.
Exactly. So, it's a really tough question to answer, particularly with someone who's, with athletes potentially who are sort of younger in their training racing experience, even with some people who are kind of quite well established. I remember one rider I used to work with quite a bit who would cycle through the same pattern every year, and I'd be like, in 2 weeks time you're going to get sick because you're pushing too hard. And he's like, no, I'll be fine. Every year, same 2-week period, get sick. And so it's honestly it's a combination of, like, what's your aggregated tolerance for body mass reduction? How's your power output? How's your tolerance to training? And kind of the kind of convergence of a number of different factors, not just what you see on the scales.
But that's why I'm excited to work with you on this project this year to take this weight off sustainably, because I have fallen into, like, that trap that you're talking about, like the unnamed rider, where I'm super motivated, so I hit it really hard. At some point, I push it too hard and I get sick, I get injured, or I just can't sustain it in terms of willpower. Oh, sure, one chocolate won't hurt. Before I know it, I'm eating a full box of roses on my own, crying, watching episodes of Father Ted. And then it's this boom and bust cycle of just, I go through a period of self-loading, gaining weight, and then it's like, no, I'm back on it. I catch a Goggins video, I'm back on it. Yeah. Who's going to carry the boats, bro? And then it just rinse and repeat. But there's this yo-yo dieting cycle that's got to do damage to us.
Yeah, I mean, you train regularly enough that I would say you're probably fairly safe in terms of, like, an absolute, if you talk about a real damage perspective, It's not great, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't advise it. But it's one of those things that it's always that really unsexy answer. It's, can you do something consistently? And actually probably a little bit more measured, like a little bit, probably slightly more tapered than everyone inherently thinks you should do it, right? And that's what makes the end result. It's the same principle as applying to training methodology, right? You look at someone who's gone out and gone through 95% of their training plan, completed it, versus someone who's absolutely hammered the first, they've accumulated 120% of the first half of the training plan, and then fell off a cliff for 3 weeks and then tried to come back, and you get to race day, and it's, then you can have two very, very differently performing human beings.
I wish it wasn't, but it seems like the answer to every difficult question in life is consistency and compounding, whether that's from an investment point of view, building business, building fitness, losing weight. So to get strategic on it now, so going from 86 to 77, or if a listener has their own numbers, starting point, end point, where do we start? Is it with identifying a calorie deficit that we're looking to hit each day, or how do you even conceptually approach this challenge?
Yeah, so I think as we said right at the start, let's set a realistic time goal. I would always go back of an envelope, a realistic goal that is sustainable for most human beings. And this is someone who's training like a reasonable amount. You'd be over 7-8 hours a week of kind of aggregated training time. If you can look at about half a kilo per week as like that's a pretty aggressive kind of weight loss, but it's sustainable if you do it in the right way. And so again, back of envelope, that's kind of 3,500 calories over a week. So divide that by 7, you've kind of got your daily calorie deficit, which is not massive, right? Again, generally speaking, you'll be somewhere between 300 to 500 calories a day. Again, back of envelope, you're just trying to add up. Just start with a huge goal, break it down into a slightly smaller goal. How long do I have? What's my kind of weekly total? And then that kind of gives you your daily total. So if everyone, it's the classic thing to do of just like have this big pinnacle of a goal, but no one works it down to, as you say, what do I do day to day? So generally speaking, it's a relatively small. It feels like a relatively small deficit. In my opinion, if you're doing it well, you shouldn't really notice it.
Yeah,
that's the feedback we always get from people who use Hexus. I'm training well. I don't really feel any different. Maybe sometimes on rest days, because we create quite big differences depending on the work that you're doing in fueling. We really believe in periodizing each day appropriately. Sometimes on rest days they go, it's because this day's so big and then this day's so small, that can feel tough. If that's the only thing and you're not like, oh God, I'm really hungry 6 days out of 7, that's a win for me.
I'm genuinely proud of my little man cave. My escape, my safe place. It's not glamorous by any means. It's crammed into the spare room in our apartment with bikes stacked in the corner, boxes everywhere, and the smell of chain lube is just kind of hanging in the air. But in that corner, that's where the work gets done. That's where I switch off from everything else and I lock in on my training. And the centerpiece of it all, it's the WAHOO Kicker Bike Pro. Honestly, it's the ultimate man cave bike. The thing just feels alive under you. It climbs, it descends, it shifts all automatically. You can dial into your exact position to the millimeter, just like your outdoor bike. And with the new setup, everything's smoother, quieter, and way more immersive. It's that perfect mix of comfort and performance that makes indoor cycling feel like a privilege, not like a punishment. And look, I'm Irish. I'm sitting in Ireland recording this right now. I know what it's like to wake up, look out the window, see wind, rain, and sideways hail, and think, do I really want to be out there today? And that's where the kicker comes in. You can get a world-class session done right there in your safe little space, no matter what's happening outside. If you want to build your own version of that space, a place to train hard, stay consistent, and escape for a little bit, check out WAHOO at wahoofitness.com. They've got everything from the flagship Kicker Bike Pro to the Kicker Core 2, which gives you that same legendary ride feel at a killer price point. WAHOO, building the better athlete in all of us. It's actually been almost the opposite for me. Like, we talked about this at the very start when you're like, oh, how are you getting on? And one of the first things I was saying is like, should I feel hungrier here? Like, I don't feel that hungry. And I was wondering, is that almost a sign that I'm not doing this right? That I'm so broken with my conditioning from racing for a French team that I just feel like I remember my director saying, like, if you're not going to bed with pains in your stomach from the hunger, you're not doing it right.
So, and I would disagree with that, unsurprisingly. But yeah, no, honestly, that's honestly the biggest thing that I think we see with people who start approaching their training and nutrition as an interaction correctly, begin to dial in that periodization piece as well. So, actually creating pretty meaningful differences in carb intake on training days. Your training quality should always be maintained. That's really what we're trying to drive. Training quality is the most important thing here, because you do that your body will adapt. Do it well fueled, your body will adapt and also change the way the priorities in which it holds mass. It'll change your system mass. So because you fuel the training sessions well, your body will inherently go, well, I don't need as much fat reserves, because each session is being fueled well. Your muscles are adapting, your cardiovascular system's adapting. Like we said, right? It's all these small changes that compound, but they kind of systematically add up. The things that cause your training adaptation will also inherently kind of support the fact of your body changing its composition to be beneficial towards racing performance.
It feels like you're also changing the nature of the engine, like by fueling. Because say I'm going out and I might have limped through an endurance session at 180 watts, the bottom of my range. Now I'm going out and doing the same 4 or 5 hour endurance ride at 220, 230 watts. Rate of perceived effort the same as it was at 180, heart rate same as it was at 180, but I'm getting through an extra 40 or 50 watts average on the session. That's pushing my total kilojoule expenditure considerably up for the session, which means I need to eat more on the bike, but I'm also eating more off the bike when I get off. And that's fueling the next session. And it just feels like you're, that old rolling stone going down the hill analogy.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because all you're doing is, if you think about increasing your body's ability to burn energy, if you increase your FTP, what have you done? You've increased your body's sustained capacity to burn energy before you hit a level of fatigue, right? So that's support training quality. The better trained you are, the higher your body, the bigger your engine capacity is to just burn energy. So unsurprisingly, as you support that through a training block, and that gets better and better and better, that's gonna support your body's ability to burn fat, from a tissue perspective, because you've just physically increased your body's capacity to expend energy, and fueling it correctly, again, is just purely going to support that process. And it's always that thing that seems so counterintuitive. Well, hang on, if I'm eating more carbs on the bike and I'm putting more in before and afterwards, but your total capacity is just increasing, your total energy expenditure is increasing. And that's going to be, as you say, as you get fitter and fitter and fitter, that's then going to start, with the metabolic flexibility that comes from periodizing your kind of carb intake as well. You're just going to start burning through a lot of that kind of, a lot of that fat tissue, and the kind of, your body will just begin to dial into what it needs. It'll begin to naturally dial into what your race weight, your race mass actually is inherently. It's just those compounding steps. Like you see it over and over and over again. When someone does it well, they go, oh, I feel great. This is brilliant. And you know what? Actually, the weight's coming off down the scales, and it's fantastic. And one of the other things I would say as well is you might see, as this process goes on, you might begin to see greater fluctuation in, like, you might see a little bit of greater fluctuation in day-to-day variability on the scales. That's because so carbs, which are stored in your body as glycogen, they need 3 grams of water to store 1 gram of carbohydrate.
Okay, so you're holding more water.
Yeah, so it's a heavy fuel. But also what we can do is, again, because we're going fill the tank, empty the tank, fill the tank, empty the tank, that tank gets slightly bigger as you get fitter. So if you go out and do a massive session and so you've emptied the tank, you know, like the variability that you're going to see is can get greater. But generally what we see as well is that some of that, like the body's natural tendency to sometimes retain fluid, you know, if you get a bit inflamed and as you get into the end of the block and you're a bit cooked, and that actually goes down a little bit. So you kind of go, oh, I'm seeing these big changes in weight, but I don't feel like it's not like I'm sore, and you know, like you get some of that, like sometimes get that puffiness around the you know, when you get to that real fatigue stage of a block. So there's little things that you'll start to notice as we progress, and it's just that compounding nature of your body adapting.
One of the questions I actually had about on the bike fueling. So if Exercise give me a recommendation of, we'll say 100 grams an hour for a hard session, and there's 2 different ways I've fueled, and just honestly, just depending on what's lying around the house. I'm not any more organized than that. So use case A, I have some gels lying about, a brand that sent them in or whatever. I'm like, oh, sweet, I've got gels. Otherwise, I'm hitting the store downstairs and I'm picking up some Haribo.
Sure.
If I'm taking 100 grams in one bang at the top of the hour versus if I'm drip feeding 25 grams every 15 minutes, is there a difference in that, or is there a preferential way to do it?
Yeah, very good question. So there's actually a study that's it might be out, or it might be just about to come out from Liverpool John Moore's, kind of looking at if you do boluses in the hour, does that change your exogenous carbohydrate oxidation capacity, or is it better to do little and often, or can you do these big boluses? I personally wouldn't recommend maybe doing 100 in one go, just because I think you're gonna increase the risk of having some GI symptoms. That's for sure. If you do bigger boluses, you do increase the risk, but it doesn't appear as though that there's too much of a difference. As long as you're getting it in and you don't have too many stomach issues, it doesn't appear as though there's too much of a difference. Now, I don't think those guys tested all of it in one go. I think they maybe did it in 2 or 4 feeds over the hour. But if you can split it, you could always try and get you could always grab a carbohydrate drink as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the play.
Try and split it, try and split it half and half or 70-30. But it doesn't matter too much. As long as you're getting it in, and as long as if you know that you don't get any stomach problems with that, then that's grand. If you can split it a little bit, different sources as well, just mix it up a little bit, is always going to help.
What I noticed, Timeware sent me out one of their respiratory breathing devices. So I think they're literally just out. Visma had them last season, and they've just started shipping them out to a couple of people now. Most of the platforms don't even know what to do with the data yet, but the Timeware app is built. So I was sitting on the indoor bike and I was like, I wonder what the effect is of my breathing with different fueling sources. A bit of bro science here.
Sure.
Haribo is a hypoxic food. I've come to the conclusion. Yep. Haribo changes my respiratory zone. I go into a different respiratory zone.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of that, a lot more of that involved with some Haribo than there is with a gel or a drink. So yeah, I can believe that. That's kind of maybe that would be a better reason to do little and often with those as well. Just minimize the try and if nothing else, let's reduce the chew time, perhaps. Maybe that's the way to think about it.
Start swallowing them like tablets.
Again, not my advice, but if it works.
When you wake up, I had my first experience. So I started, I think, I don't have the data offhand, but like 86.6, I think, was my first weigh in. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I was down to 82.0. Last week, I was at 82.1. And I know it's 0.1, but it was the first time I've had to mentally deal with the scales isn't going down every single week. It's gone up 0.1 instead of down. How do you view that? Not even how do you view it, but how do you work with an athlete who is struggling to see progress when progress isn't easily measurable like that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think having data points is really important here. So trying to have an objective measure that's pretty consistent, and ideally you're capturing fairly regularly, as you are. Like trends featuring Hexus is perfect for that. That's exactly why we built it. And just take it back, look at the numbers objectively, and be like, listen, there's an interaction here between training volume, how much you're eating, what the initial reduction in mass was, which is always a little bit quicker for the first couple of weeks. You always see it, quick drop, little plateau, and then you get a more consistent decline. It's very, very common. But I think just trying to readdress readdress and reassure, to be like, look, we're off to a great start, or sometimes even if they're not, listen, we're just, this is a process that's going to take this long, and we're here.
Yeah.
So, we've still got plenty of time. Don't do anything rash. That's always kind of the first, one of the first messages. But it's just giving them the confidence to trust in the process. So, look, you put your training in, we'll give you a fuel plan. I can tell you very confidently how all those calculations are made and why they're accurate. Look, we're going to compound this over the next few days, the next few training blocks, the next few weeks. The process is there, and it's gonna add up, and it's gonna compound, as we said, to really help achieve those goals.
So Hexus and the program we seem to be working off at the moment, if I was coaching an athlete, I'd call this like a micro block. We're looking at what the training week is, and we're periodizing around that. Like Monday, typically an easier day for me, a lot of intensity. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday's a lighter day. Friday, maybe some sort of activation, longer Saturday, Sunday. So Hexus is rightly giving me more carbohydrate consumption on longer, harder days. Is there a use case for zooming out here, or has there been research done on this and zooming out and expanding this to a macro block and saying, okay, the block we're in at the moment is VO2 focused, where there's going to be 2 to 3 VO2 sessions per week? Is that a different fueling consideration than if somebody's in a threshold block or a sprint block, or is that just getting way too nuanced?
No, I don't think it's getting too nuanced at all. And actually, it's interesting, the way you phrase it is exactly how we do it, but because we can work at an individual day resolution, we don't have to work on a block level. So if you think about it on a block level, actually you kind of go, okay, well, there's VO2. So traditionally, before we had the ability to take in each session and make each day and your meals unique, you would have to work in a block session, because the nutritionist didn't have the capacity to really periodize each day individually, depending on the work that you're doing, what you're recovering from, and what you're planning for. So you would do it as a VO2 block, and it would be like, cool, yeah, probably slightly higher carbs, particularly on training days, because you're going to be into that real fast glycogen burning zone, well above first lactate threshold, probably above second lactate threshold. Particularly if you're getting anywhere near VO2 max, then those over and unders, 40-20s, 30-30s, whatever it is, absolutely rip through your body stores of carbs. So you'd say, higher carbs for the block. The good thing about Hexus is that we actually work on a day-to-day level. So you're inherently going to have higher carbohydrate requirements for a block of work that has a VO2 focus, but not because it's a block of work with VO2 focus, because we're able to take the detail of each session
that makes sense,
and periodize appropriately for that. So when we retrospect it, which we can do, we can look back at the trends over a week, a month, and we can see how your recommendations changed in aggregate. But you'll see that you'll see block periodization, but it's because of the individual periodization of each day, more so than the block, if that makes sense.
Excuse the brief interruption to my conversation with Sam Impey. Since this video has been recorded, I've actually lost the weight. I've gone from 88 to 80 kilograms. I can't actually believe it, because the crazy thing is I'm eating way more than ever before. Some days my jaw is actually getting sore. I'm eating so much. But I feel amazing on the bike. My power numbers are not quite back to my best, but I'm trending there very fast. But importantly for me, my big hesitation when I got back training was, yes, I had the time available to train, but I couldn't do it if it meant sacrificing energy, the focus to come and have high-level conversations on the podcast. And I have so much energy off the bike. Like, I'm coming in the door fresh after 3-hour rides. It's wild. I've never experienced it before. And I want you guys to check this out. I chatted with Sam off air and his co-founder David at Hexus, and they've hooked up an amazing discount code for the Roadman listeners. So if you want to try Hexus for yourself, it's honestly the biggest leap that I've seen in cycling ever. Forget aerodynamics, it's fueling properly. So if you go over to Hexus, HEXIS.live, and you use the code Roadman when you're checking out, you're going to get 25% off your Hexus plan. Go just test it out. Trust me, it's a game changer. Okay, back to my conversation with Sam. We were talking about Jonas Abrahamsson. Me and him were kind of comparing notes on what we were doing with our diet at the moment, and obviously he's putting out like bananas power on his endurance rides. I think when I talked to him, he was just in from a 6.5 hour ride at 270 watts or something. Like, that's fat max for me. Like, that's cruising all day zone for him. So it's, light years apart. Me and him are hardly the same species. But a hack he was using, and interesting to see if I'm throwing him under the bus or if there's some legitimacy to this. He found with that amount of food, he just mechanically struggles to get that much food in on a day. Just practicality of eating that much is difficult. So, and then he found the exact same as my experience, that on a rest day, he really found himself like built the habit of eating so much. Now I'm breaking that habit one day a week. So he redistributed some of that food onto the rest day.
Yeah.
Is there flawed logic in that, or how does that make sense if we look at it, because we're still hitting the same macros over a 7-day period?
Yeah. So no, that's absolutely fine. Good, a good logic to do that. Couple of reasons for that. As you say, if it's just a function of time capacity and just, as you say, a mechanical limitation of the ability to get that kind of calories down, like fair play. You're putting away some calories there for sure. But also, like, if you're going to shift, call it, 10% of those calories onto a recovery day. One, because it's just easier not to consume them at the dinner of a training day, because you've been out for 6 hours and you don't want to go to bed, like how did someone describe it to me the other day? Like a Tudor king, because they're so, so full of food. Like, fine, like that's okay. Like if you leave some headroom on that day because you want to move it into the next day, absolutely fine. Like, that's not gonna hugely, drastically under recover you in that time between going to bed and waking up on a rest day. Put those calories back in on the rest day again, help drive that recovery, that adaptation. But also if it kind of closes the gap slightly on the variability, then that's absolutely fine. I would say I wouldn't put like 50%, because that's probably too much. That you're not recovering effectively enough from the ride in that kind of acute period, but also you're not creating enough variability day to day either. There's also, so you can also think about it as, well, that extra 10-15% maybe that's helping me recover, but it's also preparing me for the session, the start of the next block, or the following day, whatever it is. So I mean, good for him. you think about those kind of numbers, like whatever it was, like 270 ish. So he could be on like a, like 7,000 calorie day. His RMR is like a joke as well. So call it 7,500 calories. The calorie cost for him to digest his food is 750 calories.
Oh my God. I've seen Quinn Simmons as well on another podcast, and he was talking about, I'm not sure what he's using, Athlete's Kitchen or you guys, or do Trek. I don't know what Trek you use.
Little Trek.
Yeah.
I think they're in the process of trying to build their own system.
Okay, very nice. But they seem to be using a similar system to you guys. And he was sort of saying that he's saving up his calories on those days and then just going to the cake shop at the end of the day. I was like, that's what I worried about. I might start to incentivize this bad behavior. I'm like, well, if I don't eat for 7 hours, I can go and have a scoop of Ferrero Rocher cheesecake.
Yeah. So, and I think there's probably some context to be important with there. Like, a calorie is a calorie, right? It's a unit of energy at the end of the day. It's the same as the amount of energy required to heat 1 kilo of water by 1 degree. So, like, fairly standard, well-calibrated unit of energy. How you get that calorie can have very different outcomes physiologically. If you get that calorie from protein or carbohydrate or a mix or fats, the fuel that you put in the body will change the output of that total calorie aggregation. So maybe that's as much as anything else a bit of a mental thing for him, a little positive mental thing for him. So
it's like putting dirty diesel into the tank.
Exactly, but I would say that there's better choices he could make that will certainly optimize his body's adaptation and training.
Sam, we'll check back in. 82.1, and that 0.1 is important because it cost me some mental hardship going up that 0.1. 82.1 at the moment. We'll check back in 7 or 8 weeks or 6 weeks or whenever suits you, and we'll see in this, it's like Operation Transformation or something.
Operation Transformation. I like it. It's good. We'll get t-shirts made.
Thanks for chatting, Sam.
Easy. Cheers, Anthony.